2021 was a year full of reboots, remakes, and sequels, and return to forms for franchises such as Space Jam, Coming to America, and The Matrix. But we also got a lot of original stuff that I thought was great, so today you'll get to see my full ranking of all 81 new releases I saw in 2021. But before we get started, I wanted to say that I'm only going to be talking about the top 15, and the rest will just be a list. Please remember that I'm just a 13-year-old boy, and I wasn't able to watch every single movie that came out over the course of 2021. I did watch 80 of them, which is a lot, but I didn't get to watch all of them, so here are some of the ones that I missed out on or I forgot to watch. But with that said, let's get started. Luca was a film that I wasn't too excited for, and this one definitely exceeded my expectations, just like Encanto. Jack Dylan Grazer and Jacob Tremblay gave amazing performances as younger actors, and I think that the characters that they wrote in this film were just so relatable, even though they're sea monsters, and that's definitely a fictional story. The animation is just some of the best in Pixar. It reminds me of something like the Peanuts movie, where it's very cartoonish, but it actually has a lot of detail. And even though the story was predictable, it was still nice to see these characters become friends. And that ending, just like all of the Pixar movies, was really sad. I'm hoping that Turning Red, the next Pixar movie, will be good, but I think that the trailers look awful. But just like Luca, it could surprise me, and I might really like it like I liked Luca. The Guilty probably had the highest tension out of all of the films I saw in 2021. Everything, including the plot, dialogue, is just so suspenseful, and I think what they did with the film was just great. Jake Gyllenhaal gives an amazing performance as always, even though I think I like his performance in Nightcrawler a little bit better. However, one of my biggest flaws for this film is the twist towards the end. It made me like the film a bit less, and it made me a little bit less interested, but the rest of the film made up for it because the rest of the film was absolutely amazing. I wasn't planning on watching this at all, but then once I watched the trailer, I immediately wanted to see it because it looked like it was my type of thing. And it definitely was, because it was one of my favorite movies of the year, almost cracking the top 10, but not quite. I know a lot of people did not like Red Notice, but I can't deny that I had an awesome time with it. I've always loved Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson, even if they're playing the same character in every film, because their sense of humor, especially Ryan Reynolds, is just hilarious. Ryan Reynolds' delivery is just something special, and I like almost all the films he's in that I've seen, and even if I don't like the film, then I like his performance. Gal Gadot is okay here. I've never really thought of her as a great actress, but she's been getting cast in a lot of things lately, and I hope that her acting skills improve over time, but she's definitely not horrible. The twist towards the end was unpredictable, and I didn't really like it that much, just like The Guilty, but it didn't really make anything worse, and I still really enjoyed the film. As you probably know, this was Netflix's most expensive film, and you can definitely tell there's lots of stunt work and there's a lot of CGI in this film, and it looks mostly very good. But it's also one of Netflix's most watched films, and I think it deserves it. It's not one of the best action movies ever made, but it's one of my favorites of 2021, and I think even if you don't think it's a good movie, you'll definitely enjoy it for what the script has to offer. Cruella is another Disney remake, but unlike a lot of them, it's actually not a bad film. It's actually a great film. Normally, they're not very good, but a couple of them, including this one, are actually really good. Disney just did a great job making this film because it's not a complete rehash or reboot of 101 Dalmatians. It's a somewhat original origin story for the character Cruella de Vil. Now, we are getting a sequel, which I'm not too happy about, but I won't let that cloud over my thoughts about this film because, like I said, I really liked this film. The score, Disney had to pay a lot for because there are lots of 60s rock songs, and I love the 60s aesthetic in this film. Having Cruella a fashion designer just like she wanted to make a fur coat out of Dalmatians was awesome to see in this film, and even though we didn't get to see why she hated Dalmatians like she did in the 101 Dalmatians films, they made like this new story about her wanting to be a fashion designer, and the twist at the end was definitely unpredictable. I'm talking about a lot of twists in this video, and the other two weren't amazing, but this one I actually really like. Some of it didn't really make sense towards the end, and a lot of stuff that happened could have been resolved easily, but I don't really care because this is just a great film. I haven't rewatched it since I saw it in theaters. I might sometime, but it's kind of unnecessarily long and didn't need to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. Oh, and Paul Walter Hauser, the guy who plays Stingray in Cobra Kai, is great in this. The Suicide Squad was a film I didn't watch right away when it came out, but once I did, I loved it. The characters Polka Dot Man, King Shark, and Ratcatcher seems like they would belong in a kid's movie because they seem super childish, but they actually really work in this film. I'm not too happy that it got an R rating, and I think that it could have gotten some more money if it was PG-13 so more kids could go see it. But really, it's just a great movie with a lot of amazing characters with amazing actors. Idris Elba and John Cena are great in this, and John Cena showcases in this film that he can actually act and he's not just some fake wrestler that's in a lot of Nickelodeon movies. It makes a starfish as a supervillain actually compelling. Somehow, I don't know how it did it, but I liked that villain, and they did a really good job at developing these characters. But the Harley Quinn plotline in the middle just didn't really do anything for me, and that brought my score down a lot. But other than that, this is an amazing movie, and I think that every comic book movie fan should watch this film. Fear Street 1994 was a horror film right up my alley. I just love what they did with this movie, except for what they did with how it went from a slasher to this supernatural slasher thing. That wasn't my favorite, but this film I just love, and I wasn't expecting to love it so much. I actually made a horror short film, and if you want to watch it, you can find it up in the iCard right there. None of the characters are amazing in this, none of the performances are amazing, but it's one of the most entertaining films of 2021, and I can't deny that. Some of the kills are actually very unique, and I loved seeing that in a film like this, and I think Netflix did a really job making this trilogy because each entry they had in this trilogy was a solid one. They had a really unique idea of releasing each film in the trilogy week by week, like Disney Plus is doing with some of the TV shows, but it really worked well with this trilogy, so I could be looking forward to the next week when I could watch the next film in the trilogy. Fear Street 1994 is the best out of the Fear Street trilogy, and I haven't read any of the Fear Street books written by R.L. Stine, but I may have to check one out because I loved this film so much. I was not expecting to love the tragedy of Macbeth as much as I did, but I just had such a fun time quoting it because right before I watched it, I was in a production of the play Macbeth, and for anyone who cares, I played Macduff. But this film is just one of the most stylistically and visually distinct films I've ever seen. It looks a lot like The Lighthouse, which was another A24 film, but I think that I like this film a little bit better. I give them the same score of a 9 out of 10, but this film there was something about it that felt so real, and that's probably because I actually was in the play, so I got to feel what it was like to be one of the characters. Denzel Washington's performance as Macbeth was outstanding, and I love how most of the time he was giving his lines calmly, but then when he was yelling, it was more effective, and I just loved that. This film just has a plot that fascinates me, and it was brought to screen magnificently. I just loved the film so much, and I'm so glad that I watched it. Dune is a cinematic experience if I've ever seen one. It's so grand and epic in scale, and I think that everything builds up perfectly leading up to the next film, Dune Part 2, that's hopefully gonna come out next year. Basically, everyone that saw this film loved it, and part of that reason is just for the amazing cast. Dave Bautista, Timothée Chalamet, Josh Brolin, Oscar Isaac. There's so many big names in this that just made it so enjoyable even though it was such a long movie, and I loved it. Ghostbusters Afterlife is a perfect Ghostbusters sequel. It respects the original film and doesn't respect the 2016 film at all, and I love that because that film is horrible. But jokes aside, this was a film that I had a ton of fun with. Paul Rudd and McKenna Grace were great newcomers, and seeing Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson come back for this film was just phenomenal. And one of my favorite scenes in all of 2021 was the scene where all of them came together. That's not a spoiler because it's in the trailer. Free Guy was one of the most surprising films of 2021, and I'm saying that for a lot of people. The cameos, the line delivery, and everything was just hilarious, and the special effects just brought it all together amazingly. I know a lot of people wouldn't call this an amazing movie, but I just had such a good time with it that I'm going to have to call it one. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a hilarious action, comedy, sci-fi, and it blends all of those genres together perfectly. Ryan Reynolds once again gives a great and hilarious performance as Guy, and the other actors definitely did a good job as well. My favorite scene in this film was towards the end when Guy was fighting Dude. It was just hilarious, and like I said about Ghostbusters Afterlife, this has one of my favorite scenes of all of 2021. I had a great time in the theater with this, and it's one of my favorites of the year. West Side Story is the only film in my top 15 that I haven't talked about on my channel, so it's time to do so. But first I wanted to say that I love the original West Side Story. I'd give it like an 8.5 out of 10, and I think I'd give the same score to Steven Spielberg's newer translation of the show. One of the big standouts here is just the beautiful cinematography and lighting. Every shot is unique, and I absolutely loved the look of the film, and I never took my eyes off the screen while I was in the theater. All of the performances were just amazing, especially the performance for Anita. Ariana DeBose just gave an amazing performance for that character, and arguably it might be better than the original actress's performance. I think the romance between Tony and Maria was definitely more fleshed out in this version, and obviously I just absolutely loved seeing Steven Spielberg direct a musical like this. He's never done a project like this, and I think that for his first time doing a musical, it was amazing, and obviously it's in my top 5, so I loved the film. Tick Tick Boom is another musical, and I think that this one is just a little bit better than West Side Story. Andrew Garfield gives a phenomenal performance like he always does, and I was surprised to learn that he could sing when I watched the first teaser for this film. This was Lin-Manuel Miranda's directorial debut, and I think that he actually did a great job. Now, he didn't write the songs like he normally does with films that he's involved in, but the songs are just amazing. I think my favorites are 3090, Louder Than Words, and Therapy. If you haven't seen this, please watch it. It's on Netflix as we speak because it's one of the best films of 2021 and one of the best films of the entire decade so far. I think The Mitchells vs. the Machines gets the award for the most surprising film of the year. When I first watched it back in May, I did not expect it to land in my top 3 at the end of the year, but it truly deserves it because it is something special. The animation is just like Into the Spider-Verse's animation. Not quite as good, but still absolutely amazing. I cannot believe Sony Pictures Animation went from making the Emoji Movie to making some phenomenal films such as Into the Spider-Verse and this. They've transformed into an amazing animation studio, and I can't wait to see what's to come in the future. I thought that Zack Snyder's Justice League was going to be an ambitious but flawed film, but honestly, I just loved it. I thought I was going to be bored by it because of its different aspect ratio, its degraded color grading, and its 4-hour runtime, but honestly, it was just a near masterpiece and made me realize how bad Justice League really is. Die. This film just fleshed out all of the characters amazingly. In the original film, Flash and Cyborg weren't very good characters, but in this they actually have great character arcs, and the performances from Ezra Miller and I forget the other guy's name were a lot better in this film. Zack Snyder just made a one-of-a-kind trilogy with his DCEU films. Man of Steel was pretty good, BVS was really good, and this was just amazing, and this is a trilogy that I've actually come to love. Zack Snyder's Justice League was my favorite film of the year for a long time, until I saw one film that surpassed it. And that film is Spider-Man No Way Home. What an unforgettable film. I mean, it was everything I wanted and more. A lot of the theories people had were right, and even the ones that I didn't really think were going to be in the film were in the film, and that was just an amazing theater experience, and it might be my favorite theater experience ever. Sadly, I had tickets to go on December 16th, but then I got sick, so I had to go on December 17th, which was horrible, but thankfully I didn't get spoiled, and nothing was ruined while I was watching the movie. Just a mesmerizing film, and easily my favorite film of 2021. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was such a fun video to make, and even from the beginning of the year when I hadn't seen any new releases, I knew I was going to make this video when the time came, and I finally did it, and it was such a fun video to make, and I hope you guys liked it. Soon I'm going to be doing a 2022 updated version of my DVD and Blu-ray collection, but until then, stay tuned and subscribe to Cinema Ranks.